Brunswick polling locations.
Again, Commissioners, before you is at least a recommendation from the City Clerk of New Brunswick in terms of a polling location for the needs of the New Brunswick School Board election. The clerk worked with staff in terms of the inspection and in terms of reviewing those locations for availability as well as feasibility in light of COVID guidelines. So again, the clerk before you also submitted her, rationale in terms of different locations, in terms of the needs or the drawbacks from the locations not used. Upon staff reviewing that, I communicated with the clerk in both Highland Park and New Brunswick as to the locations with staff. And then upon review and approval, we submitted that to the commissioners via email.
Commissioner discussion.
Normally you have a motion first before you discuss, but I'm happy to do it either way.
I so move that we accept polling places as outlined by the persons creating the, or in the Brunswick.
Before we do that, not to take anything away what you just suggested, I think there's people that are here that probably want to discuss before we make a
No,
motion.
the Commissioner said that we made a motion
You
before
make it-
any
have a
discussion
motion made,
occurs
second,
because he
Commissioner
corrected
discusses.
Commissioner Engel from
He said he
speaking.
would do it either way.
So I made the
Yes.
motion.
Okay.
I apologize then, I just assumed you wanted the motion.
The motion now is to accept those 3 locations, is that it?
You don't have a second.
No.
Okay, here's the thing. I made the motion because Commissioner
The normal methodology on
Katz
requested-
requested the motion, so I made the motion. If there's no motion, then we'll remove it and we'll go for discussion. That's fine with me. I only made it because there was a request. Are you rescinding your request?
No, the normal methodology under Robert's rules is if something's going to be, if there's going to be a motion to do something, that you make the motion and second it, and then you
I
discuss
got
it.
that, which is why I made the motion.
Yeah,
Right.
so,
Is there any further comments? No?
Hmm.
So we're going to let the folks speak?
well, we're not going to make it, we're not going to
Donnie, you'll have to
have a
speak
motion
up. I
first.
can't hear a
I'm
word
happy
you're
to- I'll
saying.
discuss it the other way.
Commissioner Katz is happy to discuss it without having a motion
Even though
on the
that's
table
the way it's
because of
supposed to
people that are here. We
Okay.
can do it either way. I have no problem listening to people who are here because they're obviously here because of that.
Right.
But I'd
Is
like
that-
to just hear a
This one?
succinct conversation from them. I'd like to just understand what their issues are, but maybe we keep to a, not a long dissertation, but just something that we can
All right.
discuss.
But before,
We have speeches for
Chair,
3
before
minutes.
we proceed to the public, I'd like to have commissioner discussion about this and a position, okay?
All right.
For many, many years, it has been the consistent position of the Board of Elections that we, in connection with school board elections, when more of them were in April, et cetera, that we would consolidate election districts in polling locations because we had less people coming out to vote, but we would not eliminate the polling locations themselves for purposes of convenience of the voter. This proposal by the municipal clerk or wherever it originally came from eliminates polling locations, which we have never done, at least since I've been on the board. I will also say that statute provides that this is 19:8-2 provides that the county board shall select the polling places for all the election districts in the municipalities of the county for all elections in municipalities, and that the county board shall not be obligated to select the polling places so suggested by the municipal clerks, but may choose others when they may deem it expedient. So I do not believe that we should eliminate, based on the municipal clerk's suggestion, I do not believe that we should eliminate the 14 polling places that have been in New Brunswick for probably, I know at least 15 years, perhaps more. I don't think there's any reason to do that.
Really?
Yes.
Do you believe that this year is similar to every other year?
This is the situation is this is an in-person voting. It's different from the all vote by mail ballot situation.
I know you just said it's a different
Where every
situation.
voter,
I'm
where every
questioning
voter
that.
in the last two elections, in the primary and the general election, every registered voter was supposed to receive a vote by mail ballot. The polling locations, a reduced number because they all got the vote by mail ballot. That was an accommodation for people that wanted to physically bring their ballot in there, and for the very few people that were handicapped. That is not, there is no executive order that provides for shrinking the number of polling locations for COVID for these April elections.
Don, there's no executive order, but the problem that I think we're all trying to wrestle with, okay, is not what we're saying here, is not lowering the amount of polling places, it's keeping voters safe, our staff safe, our workforce safe, and we have done that all along this whole COVID. Our numbers are up in the state of New Jersey. All I'm saying to you is that this is not the same as 2018 and 19. It's a different situation. What you're quoting in verse is correct, what you're quoting in verse. But these are not the same times. So I'd like to hear from everybody, but don't say this is the same as it has been, because it's not.
If you reduce the number of polling locations, you will have more people in the other polling locations. So if you have a
You
situation...
will control the other polling locations like you do in a situation like this, okay? In the governor's executive order, right now, it's 25 people. Did you know that?
So if you have more polling
So if
locations...
you
don't
control
have
the
to
polling
invest-
location, okay, and have it, and you're working with it. All I'm saying is, I'd be glad to hear from the people. I want to hear from them. But I also want everyone to know is, we are here to protect both the residents and the voters and our staff and our workers and our poll workers and everybody that goes along with making an election. That's all I'm saying. I'd be glad to hear from them. But this is not quoting, chapter and verse. It's just not quoting. It's a different time. That's my opinion. Thank you.
I may say something later, but I'm happy if you want to hear it from the public unless any other commissioners want to say anything.
All right, we're going to hear you from the
Do
people
you want
here.
to do a limit on this, or do you want to just?
Yes, 3 minutes.
3 minutes?
There's a podium here. Charlie, okay.
Good evening, members of the board. Charlie Cradaville, you know me well, editor of New Brunswick Today. I'm also the leader of a community organization, the 5th and 6th Ward Neighborhood Association. I did want to start by making sure that you received the letter today from the Institute for Social Justice. Have the commissioners seen that letter?
Is it part of our packet? No, then I have not.
When was that sent, Charles?
I believe it was sent around noon today.
By email?
Do all commissioners or just the board office?
I wasn't the one who sent it, but I do know that I was told it was sent. It has, New Brunswick Today and the 5th and 6th Ward Neighborhood Association signing on, but also about a dozen other organizations, including the League of Women Voters, including the American Civil Liberties Union in New Jersey, and we are calling on you to do the right thing here and maintain all 14 voting locations for some of the same reasons that Commissioner Katz espoused. There is a pandemic going on, and we should be concerned about transmission of the virus. And I would submit that having less polling places makes it more likely that the virus will be transmitted on election day. It's simple. I don't know if we've ever had a school board election where there have been 25 people in the voting place at the same time, because the school board elections tend to have low turnout. But if you limit the number of polling locations, it's possible that you'll have more people gathered at the same time in the same location. It's also quite possibly, almost certainly, going to lower the number of people who vote. Last year, the governor, for better or worse, decided that everyone's going to get a mail-in ballot who's an active voter. And last year's election, I don't think it went off without a hitch, but because of that automatic, nearly universal mail-in component, most of the people who wanted to vote were able to vote. This year, folks were taken by surprise to learn that there's a proposal to cut nearly half the voting locations in our city, and specifically in areas that are low-income communities, apartment complexes, seniors, students, and communities of color. And I, for one, am very concerned about it. I know there's others here who are concerned, and I won't belabor the points, but I do want you to look at that letter before you cast any kind of vote to make a change or cut back. I can make sure that it's forwarded immediately, but I do think that the consensus among organizations that care about voting rights is clear, that it would be wrong to take away so many locations. If there's one issue with one polling place and it's not available for some reason, that's a different discussion. But what this is wholesale voter suppression, cutting back nearly half the locations and not offering the universal mail-in ballot option that was offered last year. It's simply unacceptable. You're in a position of power here, and I hope that you'll use that power for good and maintain the access to these voting locations, because doing so will enable more people to vote and lower the chances that this dreaded, horrible virus will be transmitted. It's common sense that if you have less polling locations, you're more likely to have more people gathered at the same time, and you're more likely to have more people interacting and touching things, and it's just not going to achieve the goal. If the goal is to protect people from the virus, then we should maintain all 14 locations, encourage people to do the vote by mail if they so choose, but in the absence of an automatic, near universal mail-in ballot system, that is it's unacceptable to cut back, and it's actually counterproductive to cut back. And as stated by the commissioner, there's no law or rule or executive order that requires any type of limiting of the polling locations. And in the absence of a rule requiring it, it's your decision, as you stated. And I really hope that you'll listen very carefully to the points that are made, and that you'll get a copy of that letter. I'll try to forward it to you from my phone right now, if you want to read it. It's not long, but it makes some really important points.
I am.
And okay, I'm done? Okay, I'll just finish by saying real quick, some of the same families that are going to be affected by this are families that lost their school. This is a school board election. It's an important issue in the election that a school was sold and is currently being demolished. And now those same voters who have a chance to have their voices heard, it's going to be harder for them because they're losing a part of their voice. It's going to be harder for them to vote, and that's just not right by me. So I hope you'll take this to heart.
Your
Thanks.
school was a voting place?
No, I mean they actually sold the school, the Lincoln Haddock School.
Was it a voting place?
It was not a voting place, but those neighborhoods are among the ones that are affected. Thank you.
All right. Next speaker. That's 3 minutes.
Hi. My name is Susan Miller. I'm from New
Could you
Brunswick.
state your name again?
My name is Susan Miller. I'm from New Brunswick. And I really wanted to echo the comments of Charlie Cradaville. And I have to agree, this absolutely makes no sense. In a pandemic, to reduce the number of polling places, that's unbelievable. I mean, you're increasing by 75% the number of people at each polling place, assuming that the number of voters stays the same. The effect of this is probably going to be to reduce the number of voters. That's not the way to deal with a pandemic. That's not the way to keep people safe in a pandemic. People need to be safe in a pandemic and to be able to vote. They should not have their rights taken away from them simply because they could contract the virus. Okay, I don't understand the logic. Can you explain the logic of reducing the number of polling places in order to prevent the spread of the virus?
I'm not going to take
You
away from your time.
concentrate people by 75%, okay, if you do that. I mean, surely you're familiar with the mathematical operation of division. You can do that, okay? 14 is a bigger number than 8. If you divide by 14, you get a smaller number than when you divide by 8, okay? You get 75% fewer people if you have 14 polling places than if you have 8 polling places. What excuse can there possibly be for doing this? You endanger people. You don't keep them safe. You endanger people. You're doing exactly the opposite of what you're claiming to do. That's why this is clear voter suppression, okay? And one of the voting places, one of the voting sites that's being eliminated, as Charlie has pointed out in New Brunswick today, was the voting site for Tove Manor and for Dewey Heights. And the people from that area, from those areas, would have to go to Rutgers Village. And there's no safe way to get there. Even if you were to, say, go around and take Riders Lane, you'd either have to walk in the shoulder of Riders Lane and cross a freeway entrance and a freeway exit, or you'd have to cross over Riders Lane twice, okay? And you'd have to walk about 3 miles if you didn't have a car. And I'm sure there are plenty of people who don't have cars. I mean, you're actually stopping people from voting if you do this. There's no excuse for this. Okay, thank you.
May I ask Ms. Miller a question? Ms. Miller, do you know where people voted at Dewey Heights before they voted?
I believe they voted at the Labor Ed Center.
No, they voted at Rutgers Village. Did you know
Well,
that?
they then,
Did you know that?
I didn't know
Okay,
that,
but they did.
That's
okay?
not true.
And did you know?
They go to where?
Rutgers Village.
it's not the
That's not
nearest
true.
place. It wouldn't have made any sense.
Do you know
It's-
that?
The nearest
have you-
place
have
is
you-
the
Have
Labor
you driven
Ed
through
Center.
Tove Manor recently?
Sorry?
Have you driven through Tove Manor recently?
Yeah, I have actually,
Do
down
you know
Phelps
there's a, do
Ave.
you know there's a parking problem there?
I didn't notice
Do you know
it.
that mostly every resident there, a lot of residents have cars there?
A lot of
And they
residents
do,
do have
and
cars.
they do transport themselves by, no, I'm just asking, do you know that? That's all I'm asking.
No, I don't know that because
Okay.
it's not true.
It is true. Thank
I went there to canvass recently. Within the last couple of years, I went there to canvass.
Mhm.
I had absolutely no difficulty parking my car.
Okay, good.
There was no parking problem,
Okay, thank you.
okay?
Thank you.
Next speaker?
Hello, my name is Miguel Romero. I'm a resident of Brunswick.
Is it Miguel?
Yes, Miguel, M-I-G-U-E-L. So this is the first time I'm at one of these meetings, and I was just wondering if you had heard about what happened on January 6th in DC. I'm sure all of you have, and I think it's imperative for the safety of the nation to have transparency and to have very stable elections. Now's the time to not put into doubt whether there's any fairness into the voting that's going on. And it's exactly what what Charlie and Ms. Miller said about, not only is it the safety, but it's also the integrity of the elections. And I mean, I think this is a very serious problem that, that we face and we're still facing with a lot of those people that, don't think that the election was really, legitimate. So I would encourage this body to, maintain those voting places open. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next speaker? Your name, please.
My name is Jennifer Garcia.
Last name is?
Jennifer Garcia.
Garcia?
Yes, Garcia. This is my first time running for the Board of Ed elections, I should say. And I'm appalled with the decision City Council took. Why does City Council have so much power? That's what I ask myself every day. Why does it have so much power? I'm a resident of New Brunswick, and I see so many things that are very, very surprising. Just so you know, there's so many problems with tenant and landlords. And many of the rules that City Council passes, like ordinances, they are not enforced. It's just like they make ordinances and just for show and don't enforce it. So when I heard about polling places being closed and that we're only going to have 8 instead of 14, I do agree that there should be 14 polling places, because the more polling places you have open, more people can go to different locations and COVID-19 will not spread. I mean, the CDC says masks and hand sanitizer, and that's the protocol that workplaces have been taking. And if you see workplaces that have many people together, they are the ones that have a big outbreak for COVID-19. And I just want to say that since the beginning of the pandemic, everything has been going backwards. Vaccines to people who are older and more susceptible to the disease, instead of people who are essential. They're the ones that need it. And that's what I see here. It's going backwards. Why are you closing polling, well, why is City Council able to do this? Closing polling places that many of the residents live by. And most of the residents, they don't drive. Like Roosevelt School, that's a neighborhood school. People can walk there to go. Labor Education Center, people from Phelps Ave can walk there to go on the other side. And I do agree with one of the people who came here to speak. Have you seen Jersey Ave? Jersey Ave is not safe. There are so many trucks passing by there. So many trucks, and people from the Hampton Club, people who live by McKinley School, they have to walk to the Department of Public Works if they don't have a car. And the only transportation that there is the shuttle. Is that shuttle bus clean? Most likely it is, but it doesn't come every hour. It has different hours, every 2 hours, every 3 hours, because I've used it before. So I'm from the community, and definitely this is a huge disadvantage to us. And for the Board of Ed elections, I see that there is a diverse board, but many of them are quiet. Why don't we speak for the community when they say, hey, I'm going to be a voice for the community? Where's your voice? You're just there sitting. And just say, yes, I agree on that, and they pass an ordinance. So that's why I say, for show, you pass the ordinance and don't enforce it. So just please, I know that City Council can do the right thing, but I just think it's time for change already. And being a voice of the community is not just being in an important position. All of you have important positions. And as a Middlesex County resident, I would like to see more done. And please just have the 14 polling places open. I grew up without my parents driving. Many of the people that live in New Brunswick, they can't even drive. Licenses will be passed May 1st, but upon that, you need documentation. Some of you may understand the struggle, but some may not, because you did not live through it. So just think about it. Have the 14 polling places open, and we would be okay. Less transmission of COVID-19. And I have to say, I lost a family member just because they were working. They're an essential worker working in a factory, and the employer did not implement masks, gloves, hand sanitizer. All the workers were close together. You could not even turn around. Just don't do that. We don't want that at 8 polling places. That's all I can say. And no condolences.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Hi, good evening, Commissioners. My name is Linda Stork, S-T-O-R-K. I'm a New Brunswick resident in the 6th Ward, and I am very, very concerned about this situation with the polling places. And we, attempted to talk with the city clerk at the city council meeting. We attempted to get answers from the Board of Education because we were told that the Board of Education had been consulted. Well, the Board of Education says they weren't consulted, but then they turned around and said they had added a polling place at the behest of the people who consulted them. So that was totally confusing. And we were informed by the city clerk that it was a COVID-19 measure to limit the number of polling places, which is, I'm not going to go into the logistics of that, compressing more people into less spaces, wouldn't make sense for social distancing. But we were also told that as far as which places were closed, that she had looked at the neighborhoods and where people live. Well, to me, the most egregious, I'm losing my polling place too, but it is not a problem for me to get in my car and drive to the next one. The most egregious example of this is that they plan to close the New Brunswick Housing Authority, which it sits in the middle, right in the middle of our two huge low-income housing complexes. So that's like centrally located where all the people in public housing can walk and go and vote. And they would have to go down to Jersey Ave, the aforementioned Jersey Ave, which is horrible to walk on, and walk down to the Public Works garage, where nobody lives. Public Works garage. So I didn't understand the logic of that. It just doesn't look fair the way it was done. Some of the other places that are closed are the senior center in my neighborhood, the Hungarian Culture Center, which is the neighborhood of Lincoln Annex, the school that was sold and demolished, of the neighborhood school. And it's in fact the place where we met when we were organizing to try and prevent that, was the Hungarian Culture Center. Roosevelt School, oh my gosh, I worked there. That's a huge community school. So it's right in the middle of the community. Everybody pretty much walked there. Many people don't have cars in that neighborhood. And so once again, the effect, I can't help but think. I mean, the headlines today, I have to say, were alarming about the COVID. We're apparently in the middle of a third wave. So I would totally get saying, like, mail everybody a ballot again. I would get that. But I do not understand limiting the number of polling locations. That doesn't seem fair at all, and especially the ones that were eliminated. And it really doesn't seem fair. As I say, I don't know if there's a way that can be done, but to me, that would be the other solution. If you can't safely open 14 polling stations, which if we can open 8 safely, I think we can more safely open 14. That's what I would think. But the other solution would be to just mail everybody a ballot again. This election is coming up in a few weeks, and from what I was reading in the paper today, we're in the middle of a third surge upwards. So that, to me, would make sense, and would have the potential of possibly even augmenting voter participation. I think last year people were caught by surprise and didn't realize they had those ballots up. Oh, I'm sorry, okay. But this year, the effect of this would be to suppress the vote, intentional or not, but that would be the effect of it. Thank you.
Mr. Clark, can I ask you a question?
Question?
So you made a suggestion of all mail-in ballot, or sending the mail-in ballots to all the voters. Would you do that instead of opening up the, because you're saying the same thing as we're all reading about the third wave, and
Yeah.
would you suggest that would be a better solution?
I'm a science person. I would say leave that up to the public health people.
Well, the
Whatever
public
is
health
safer.
people, but see, that's what you're a science person, and you're bringing that up as a point, okay? So the science people are saying the same thing you just kind of was getting into your iterations about third wave, surge, more possibility. So if we went to an all mail-in ballot, if we went, which is one of your suggestions, not suggestions, one of your comments, would that be a better solution in your eyes? Forget the science. Just I'm talking about.
If it's
you're
a
here
safer,
for-
to me,
Yes.
in my opinion, if it's a safer solution, it's a better solution.
Okay. Okay, fair. Thank you.
To Mrs. Stork's point, and I think I included in the materials for the commissioners, was that the county clerk had said that they would be expanding mail-in ballot hours prior to the April elections, and that their office would be open for evening hours for residents of New Brunswick and Highland Park that needed mail-in ballots on demand prior to that election. But I don't know if I included that.
Requested or mailed?
Well, I mean, you could always call and request a mail-in ballot, but that they would have the extended hours that if residents of New Brunswick or Highland Park wanted to go and request on demand the mail-in ballot for the week prior to the election, that they were having expanded hours into the evening for that. And I think that's going to be put on the county website as well as the New Brunswick website as well to reflect that.
So are you saying so is that a request, just so I understand what you're saying, was that the extended hours would be a request to the county clerk's office or to the municipal clerk's office?
That we do it to the county clerk so if residents from Highland Park and or New Brunswick wanted to request mail-in ballots a week prior to the election. And again, they could do that during regular hours during the county clerk's office, but the week prior they would have evening hours and extended hours even on Saturday for residents that wanted.
And I'm sorry, because the air conditioning, at the county location or at the municipal location?
No, at the county clerk
County
location,
location, okay.
which is across the street from it.
However, that's still a single individual requesting it as opposed to the suggestion that all people are mailed a ballot, which I believe is a more useful practice. And that's not been a suggestion.
Yes, that was not my suggestion, because if I may just share my experience with trying to request an application for a mail-in ballot from the county website. It was not easy.
Really?
The link from the Board of Elections, where it says to request.
Hourly?
Yeah, that didn't work. But I was referred, so I called and I was referred to, because I was doing it during office hours, but I wanted to see, because I'm telling people how to do this, so,
Right.
what if it wasn't office hours? So most people work during the day. And so then it was referred to the county clerk, who then referred me to a state website, where I was in fact able to download an application for a mail-in ballot, but I had to copy it on 2 different sides and then fold it and staple it together, and then it needed a stamp to get sent in. So that wasn't really too good. And I specifically asked, could the link be fixed on the county website, on the Board of Elections website, and I was told no. Just tell people to use the state website. So yeah, I don't really think that's a good solution.
Well, it's not I wasn't proposing a solution, just because you mentioned that. I wanted to
Okay.
highlight that
So-
to the commissioner.
And you're saying that people could directly just request the mail-in ballot, or are they requesting an application for
No,
a
you
mail-in
could,
ballot?
again, it would be much like they do prior to election. You could go in, fill out the application, where they have the county commissioner meetings on the first floor, prior to the general and primary election, you would go in, fill out the application, and then they would process it and give you the mail-in ballot on the spot. And then you could fill it out and then leave it in that drop box that's at the county.
But you'd have to be able to go do that during working hours.
No, that's why I was highlighting is that
They
they were
will
going to
extend the
extend the
hours.
hours into
Okay.
the evening for vote
Okay,
for
I
vote prior to
understand
the
that.
election.
You're still not going to get nearly the participation you would get by just mailing people.
I was just highlighting because you had mentioned that.
All right, thank you.
Hello, good evening. My name is Araceli Gonzalez from North Brunswick.
I'm sorry.
Araceli Gonzalez, North Brunswick. So, as a North Brunswick resident, my voting rights are not directly being violated. But I do believe that whatever decision you make today is going to set a precedent. And as a person that values the democratic process and my participation in it, it's actually terrifying to think that I vote in every single election. And I have many family members in New Brunswick that don't understand their participation, value their participation, but for the first time, they're eager to be a part of it, especially because of the scandal of Lincoln Annex in New Brunswick. But they don't know, they have said to me that New Brunswick is too corrupt and whatever they do, however they vote, it won't matter. So I feel like if you take away their voter rights and you make it harder for them to vote, that's going to reaffirm to them that idea that their participation doesn't matter. So I ask you not to do that, because I would think if this is what your job is, you would want a vibrant democracy. So for the rest of my time, I'm going to read a statement from a resident of New Brunswick who couldn't be here today because it had a baby. But they asked me to read this out. They live in, the name is Laura Mertz. She lives in New Brunswick, downtown. So this is her statement. Hello, my name is Laura Mertz, and I'm a resident and homeowner in New
Marcelo,
Brunswick.
I know it's hard with the mask. Could you try to just speak up a little bit more? It's hard. I know it is.
Yeah, I'm
I
soft-spoken,
know.
sorry, yeah.
I know it
Sorry
is,
about it.
and I understand it. And just maybe slow down a smidge, that's all.
Okay. So I'm just going to read out the statement. My name is Laura Mertz, and I'm a resident and homeowner in New Brunswick. I'm a strong voting advocate and believe that our nation is strongest when all voters have equal access to the ballot box. For that reason, I have been proud of New Jersey as we made national news last month for our expansion of voting rights and access, compared to so many states that are trying to suppress the vote. But I am ashamed that New Brunswick has joined Georgia, Texas, and Kansas, which are all enacting measures to prevent people from being able to vote. The polling stations you are proposing to remove are Black and brown communities. They are near public housing buildings. I also noticed you are not proposing to eliminate my polling location located near luxury high-rises in our downtown area. The people living in public housing are much less likely to own cars compared to those in luxury apartment complexes. People in public housing are less likely to have good health insurance compared to those that can afford to live in high-priced buildings. By closing their polling stations, you are endangering their health and safety. They will have to travel over 2 miles on public transportation in a pandemic and go to a more crowded polling places, just as we are seeing an increase in COVID-19 again in Middlesex County. At a time when we could continue New Jersey's strong showing of voting rights, the board is opposing the exact opposite. Rather than embracing a voter-centric model, you are embracing systemic voter suppression and of those you don't think are worthy enough of the right to vote easily and conveniently. I implore this board to keep all the polling stations open for the welfare of the people you represent. To do anything else is unthinkable and this fraught time when we are in a battle across the country for voting rights. Thank you. So that was Laura Mertz, New Brunswick resident. And I would also like to echo that in saying that the young family members that I was referring to, the first generation voters, Mexican Americans, and they feel disenfranchised. And again, this would reaffirm that. And that is not something we want in a time like this that feels very, very repressed already. That's all for me. Thank you.
Next speaker?
Good afternoon, members of the board. My name is Matthew Rivera. I'm a New Brunswick resident, and I'm also
Matthew, how do you spell your last name?
Rivera. R-I-V-E-R-A. And I'm actually also running for the Board of Education in New Brunswick. So respectfully, Madam Chair, if possible, could you ask the staff what the normal polling location was for Todd Manor?
Chairs.
Oh, apologize.
I didn't hear what you said.
Could you ask members of the staff what the polling location was for Todd Manor?
What was the polling location for Tove Manor? What was for Tove Manor?
What is the
Yes.
normal polling, the question I think is, what is the normal polling, of the 14 polling
Tove Manor, it's
place?
right off Brown.
Where is the regular polling place for Tove Manor?
Yes.
That's the question?
I don't know off the top of my head.
Okay,
You can look it up if you could, potentially.
What's that?
What's the word district?
Ward 1, District 5?
6. Ward 1, District 6.
6, I'm sorry.
Oh, it's the Rutgers Labor Education.
Just want to get that on record. And aside from that, I'd just like to state that as citizens, I believe it's a responsibility to encourage and facilitate voter participation for everyone if possible. And that I believe that responsibility is even more important for our elected officials, especially when it comes to local elections when voter turnout is already so low. So I don't want to reiterate the points already made, but thank you for your time, and I thank you.
Mr. Rivera?
Yes, sir.
With the math, I figure, did you work as a seasonal for the?
I did, yes.
Oh, and
Or it's the technical
you
accounts.
worked here too, right?
Yes.
Oh, during the election? Okay. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I thought he was.
I'm sorry, I didn't.
And also, I'd just like to build off what Lindy mentioned. While I was working there, there were a lot of technical issues when it came to voting online.
Excuse me, sir, who's standing up 6 feet, you need 6 feet distance, okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Sorry, Mr. Rivera.
Yes. I would like to build off of what Lindy stated before, that when it came to voters trying to register online for vote by mail ballot. It was incredibly difficult, and a lot of them did complain about the, I guess, back and forth between the different offices. So that's just something to keep in consideration. Thank you.
Next speaker.
Well, my name is John Hsu, Edison County Committee, District 67. Just came here to listen to this issue with an open mind. I'm not too familiar with everything that was going on. I just wanted to understand. Yeah, I think, based on the testimony of the residents, I'm kind of leaning towards their side. They made a compelling case to me. I have not really heard a case like why they needed to close the polling stations. I'm open to hearing that, but so far, I'm leaning towards their side. Obviously, right now it's a national conversation about voter suppression, and we have the PRO Act in Congress right now. There's discussion about state legislators potentially reducing, making voting harder for people. So just in that national climate, I do think it's important to continue making voting more accessible for everyone. That's my main point. I don't know what the situation is. I would like to find out more. I don't know if there's going to be a vote tonight. I think the residents here made a compelling case. So, thank you.
Next speaker. No more?
Thanks, everybody.
Okay, Commissioners.
I have further comments.
Speak up, Don, please. Speak up.
Okay, I have further comments. Just to be very clear, this board is an administrative board. We have no right to change the law. So there is no possibility to have all vote-by-mail ballots sent to everybody, unless the governor put in an executive order to that effect, which he has not done. But the concern here, and I see this, is that
Excuse me, Commissioner. Sir, in the back, you're going to have to silence your phone, or you're going to have to leave. Thank you. Sorry.
Okay, that's fine.
We're taking videos.
It's all right. Part of my understanding is part of this reason is that it's because of COVID, so they're cutting down the polling places, which is to be consistent with what they did in the general election, et cetera, under executive order, which provided for that. One of the reasons those executive orders provided for that was because it was an issue of getting poll clerks. In this election, and we have 500-600 election districts, the 2,400, 3,000 poll clerks. In this situation, we have on the school board election date, we have one town, 14 polling places, not 500 or 600. We should be able to get the number of poll clerks that we need to run this, even if we can't get them from New Brunswick. So it's a big difference in terms of that. That is not an issue. That is not a reason to eliminate polling places. Secondly, or another part of it, I quoted part of the statute before. My understanding that with the way this discussion has gone is the inconvenience of the voters that have to go further to these other polling places. And the statute, same one, 19:8-2, provides that the county board may select a polling place other than a school, house, or public building outside of the district, that's the election district, but such polling place shall not be located more than 1,000 feet distance from the boundary line of the district. The Secretary of State may, however, permit permit that under certain circumstances. My understanding is with these eliminating the six polling places, many of the voters, maybe all of them, will have to go more than 1,000 feet outside their districts to get to the other polling place. And there's no reference that the Secretary of State has authorized that either. I just don't think that there's any reason for us to change the polling places, because the polling places in place are the 14 that are there. That's what's in place, the 14 that are there. I don't think there's any reason for us to vote to change that to a reduced number. Quite frankly, most of you take a political position different than mine, so it's somewhat irritating, but that's fine. I'm going to be happy with it. I don't need credit. I just think that this is what's right, so that's it.
We're not talking politics, we're talking
Sure.
logic.
Any other comments from the commissioners?
I would like to hear from our warehouse manager,
Okay.
who's worked closely with the clerk on this. And I would like to hear what he has to say about this.
I myself plus Bob Lynch received a phone call from Leslie. In past practices, we have always gone with whatever whatever municipal clerk presents to us. Now, I looked at everything that she presented to me. I understand that there's going to be people that are not going to have their polling places open. She explained to me certain, at the time, I don't have them in front of me now, and I know that there was a letter I printed out at the last minute that she sent over that I made sure that you guys had. She has her explanations in there. They were the same explanations that I received over the phone along with Tom Lynch as well, my administrator. And so we went out, she proposed 8, we went out and we checked the 8. The concerns of the other polling places were that they were not big enough or open with space. She was concerned that she may not be allowed, and I don't remember exactly which one, so I don't want to put words in her mouth. I heard her concern. I took the 8 that she proposed to me, and then I sent my staff out to inspect to make sure that it would be big enough to house a certain amount of districts, that there would be enough space so that they can socially distance. Okay, she used the same polling places originally, the 6 that she did last year. Okay, they were okay enough to have a very strong amount of poll workers. We are not doing a normal 4 poll workers that we do on a usual. We're trying to push about 8 to 10 poll workers for this. So it's also limiting the amount of people that can go in those buildings. I know that we still have to worry about, there is a code that you're supposed to have as far as limiting the amount of people. So anything that was considered smaller, she was concerned about. And I echo those concerns too, because I do worry about the voters 100%. I worry about, I've never been one to want to do anything like this, but this is a pandemic, and I didn't look at it from the standpoint of trying to suppress a single voter. That is not my intention at all. I was asked to inspect those polling places, and we did. We went out and we took a look at them. They're handicap accessible. They can work on election day, and more importantly, I believe the ones that have the consolidated districts that have a decent amount, we feel that that will operate smoothly, just like it did in the general election. So as far as that part was concerned, I felt confident with that. I did hear what she had to say. I didn't argue for any more, because at that point she described each district that was, or each polling place that was being moved in the districts and why. And I was okay with her explanation. I didn't see anything that was going to be, like I said, that's exactly how it went down. As far as you want to go place by place, you would have to more or less talk to her, because I didn't inspect the polling places that are closed. I do know them. We do inspect them every year. So I understand when she explains to me that she's worried about a spacing issue and having 8 to 10 poll workers there, what kind of limit that would have on voters, because they'd have to stand outside instead of inside. Okay, and I do understand all that. So and that's exactly why I was okay with it. So I brought it to my administrator, and then that was it. I don't make decisions. That is not what I do. Yes?
No, you're, keep on going.
Okay.
This is a discussion, I'm asking you to comment.
Okay.
This isn't a discussion with inside.
I don't, like I said, I don't make decisions or anything like that. That's not what I do. I'm a low man on the totem pole. I am just here to pretty much, there's not a polling place that doesn't go through our hands at the warehouse. And, you know, so as far as I was concerned, I felt like it was fair, okay? And I was okay with the fact that what she presented me, because I don't, again, I'm not making these decisions. I just go ahead and I put forth what I present. And I brought it to my administrator, and that's it. And from there, he has to bring it to the commissioners.
And just echoing what Steve said, consistent with what we did in the primary in general, in terms of trying to give guidance to the clerks in terms of the size of the polling location so that we can manage the poll workers and voters that are coming in and out. And I guess the concern with some of the locations that, well, if they're available or not, was the either room capacity to be able to safely do that as well. But again, just kind of give a context to what Steve said. And again, I had a conversation with the clerks as well, both in Highland Park and Brunswick when Steve was, and his staff was done with their due diligence and then presented, gave those locations to the commission.
So did the clerk say anything about cutting down because of the reasons for, besides COVID, the reasons why, I don't have the extra 6 in front of me right now, but, for instance, I believe the labor center. I mean, did you discuss poll place by poll place, or you just went in general, she felt this was just a better solution of why?
In terms of our discussion, she went location by location and kind of outlined her concerns for each one.
Okay.
Any other comments?
I would note in terms of, Steve was asked to go inspect the polling locations and they were acceptable. That's not unusual because those are the regular polling locations that we've been using for years. And the other 6 polling locations that are proposed to be closed are also polling locations that we've used for years and which presumably also continue to be handicap accessible and meet the other requirements. They did before, unless anything has changed, that is not there. So I don't believe that that's a relevant issue.
What he
What's
said was when
not
he,
a relative issue?
The relevant issue, we inspected the others and said that they were okay, that they didn't inspect it once they were closed.
change,
because they
he
were out.
said he inspected it for the change.
Right,
So
but
he
there
was
were
looking
none-
at it for a larger input of personnel.
There's also no reason that we have to put 8 or 10 poll clerks in each of the other 6 locations. We could have a smaller number of poll clerks there for these purposes. It's not necessary. I have no further comments. I can't answer your question. Anything would be through the chair.
I have to agree with more polling locations because less people will enter them and in view of COVID. And that's my view. So should we vote or motion?
I don't know what the motion is. I don't know what Don's making. Don wants
I'm not making a motion.
I'm not either.
If we do not make a motion, we have never, since I've been on the board, had a motion where we put in, where we kept reference to keeping the polling places. The only motions this board has made in the last, since 2004, has been if we change the polling place. So if you don't have a motion to change
And if we have a request,
that's fine.
We
But
have-
you can make a motion to
Let him
reduce
finish,
it.
please.
right, if we have a request, which we normally, I'm saying, I'm sure there's a time we didn't, but for most of the time, a higher percentage of time we do, we take what the clerk asked us to do with working with our staff, take all that into account, and we usually, I don't have a percentage here, okay? And with, again, these unusual times, I think we have to listen to what the clerk says. And everyone here is discounting it in reference to, and I understand everyone talking about it, and they're saying voter suppression, and there's things like that, but I'll go back to go back to my scientist friend, okay, who reads the newspaper, okay, and the commissioners know this, okay, I've been the most concerned about COVID. Well, I shouldn't say that. I am very nervous about COVID. I've lost a relative, I have lost friends to it. I'm sure you all too, I'm not sitting here going personally, okay, but I've been very much a staunch supporter, making sure that the staff and our staff throughout the whole process of these 13 months, okay, have been as safe as possible. I think that's what the clerk did. I think the clerk asked us to review it, look at it, go over it, and these are highly, highly unusual times. I agree, if it's a general time and we try to do something like this, I disagree. So Don, if you're not going to make a motion, I'll make a motion. I make a motion that we accept clerk's report dated, I don't know what the date was that you gave us the report for the revise of the polling places.
But we should do that for all of the discussion, the Highland Park, et cetera. So
We did Highland Park already, we did Highland Park.
We voted on this.
Yeah, we did. So you made the motion?
Yes.
Second?
Second.
Roll call.
Chairman Engel,
No.
Commissioner Franklin,
Yes.
Commissioner Katz,
No.
Commissioner Moskowitz.
Yes.
Tie vote, motion fails.
No.
Tie vote, motion fails.
Motion failed.
Check Robert's rules or any other parliamentary procedure.
So now there are no polling places in that?
No, there are.
I'm asking the commissioner, the director, does that mean that there are no polling places now because the motion failed? And we always work with the clerks and mayors to make that determination. By negating this request to just maintain that process, does that mean there are now no longer any polling places?
That is not.
I have not voted
Yeah.
That is
Back
not
to add any
correct.
numbers.
If-
We
correct.
voted to accept the recommendations of all of the clerks and mayors.
That is not.
I was
correct.
asking-
In every instance, we keep in place the polling locations that have existed before. We have never voted separately to adopt, we adopt the same polling locations on an onward basis. Any changes in terms of polling locations are what we vote on. That's what was made, the motion that was made. If that motion has failed,
But
then
that's
the,
my
then the
point.
po- then the polling
So
locations.
there will be no polling
then the-
places
no,
in
the
said place
polling
because then we
locations-
have to do another motion
No, we don't.
to add that.
The polling locations that have been in place for
No.
the last 20 years
No.
in New Brunswick, or more than 20 years
I
in New
will
Brunswick, are in
not
place.
accept that as your ruling.
We have
My
never,
request is, we
have
have
you ever
worked
voted,
with,
have you ever
excuse
voted
me,
to re-adopt the polling locations, the current
I
polling
have been
locations?
on school boards as a member, council, etc. And when you make a vote to negate a request, then nothing is in its place. You do not revert back to something that happens a year ago or 5 years ago. In fact, the most recent voting places were those that were limited. If that's not correct, is that not accurate?
You did vote
So
to
you're gonna
accept
go
the
back
ones
to
in general.
even smaller numbers of voting places, which in a town like Metuchen actually put, do you recall?
The polling places.
It was
in the-
quite strained, so that would be
The
unfortunate.
polling places in the.
We had only one
the polling
in an
places
entire
in the year
municipality.
2000 were under executive order. They were not the normal polling places. Pursuant to executive order, they did that, and we adopted those polling places for that election.
And
based
those were
on-
the most
based on the
recent polling
requirements of the
places.
executive
Commissioner, I'm
order.
using your own language.
Based on the requirements of
using
the
your own
executive
language.
order. which
Those
were
were the
not
most
the
recent
normal
polling
polling
places.
One at a time.
Just, again, just for context and information, the clerk has not submitted 14 polling locations for this election, and 14 polling locations
I can't hear
are
what you're
not,
saying.
14 polling locations were not submitted by the municipal clerk as polling locations. 14 weren't inspected, and I don't believe from the conversation with Steve and the clerk that all 14 are available.
All but I believe one of them are governmental locations, so they should be available when required to be.
But you don't know.
So I have a question, since you know the executive order so well. Has the executive order expired?
The executive orders that had shrunk the number of polling places were specifically for last primary election, when we had all vote by mail ballot. That was part of the same executive order, and the executive order for the last general election, which was all vote by mail ballot, and shrunk them at the same time. Those executive orders related to those two elections. They have nothing to do with this election. The executive order that related to this election specifically said that it would be an in-person voting. Of course, people could still vote by mail, and it was in-person voting, and it moved some of these elections from other dates, the fire district elections, and some other dates to the same day. That's the only executive order that's in place for this election.
Why can't we contact the clerk and let her redo it? Redo the polling places to 14. I'm sure she won't object.
Well, if we make a motion to do all 14 and we can't do all 14, then we can't make a motion to do 14. So maybe we should change. Let me make a possible compromise here. Since we all agree that 8 is 8, correct? We all agree that 8 is a number that we, right? And now we're discussing the other 6, is to have maybe our administrator and our warehouse supervisor speak with the clerk and try to work out a compromise of what a couple others might be?
That's the way to do it.
Is that a because we can't do 14.
No.
Only if there's an independent determination in terms of any polling place that is legitimately not available.
What's an
If it's
independent?
legitimately not
What's an
available.
independent? Wait, time out. What's an independent? What does that mean?
What does that mean?
What does that
I
mean?
see press reports, tap into, etc., which says
I see
that-
you talking to the people. I see you
No,
making press.
no.
I see you making comments all
I'm
over the
making-
press.
I'm making
I see
comments
you make
because I'm
comments.
making
When we
comments
also
because
made,
the
when we
press
also
reports-
made, we've also made, okay, that nothing is to be commented here too. And you're going out making comments from this board, saying it's the board. Make your own comment for your own commissioner and make it yourself. Don't make it for the board.
I'm not
Thank
making
you.
it for the board. The situation on here.
I would like to make a motion that we meet, have our administrator and warehouse manager meet with the clerk on Monday, April 5th.
Whenever.
Well, that's the only, people are off tomorrow, so,
Tomorrow's Friday. Oh, yes.
because Good Friday.
Good Friday.
And then we approve, and they come with try to come up with a solution to have more than 8 and less than 14, because we can't do 14.
Why not take it to 14?
We can't get into some of these polling places.
Which one?
How do we know that?
We do know that.
You
How
were
do we know
told
that?
that. You were told that by the
Who was
people
told?
who have
Who
run
told
the
us that?
elections.
Which-
That's why they made the decision.
Who told
And
us
I'm
that?
so sorry that persons believe, the logic of the presentation was lovely. And that makes
May I ask a
sense.
question?
However,
May I ask a question?
runs-
May I ask a question? Was the Providence Square decline our request for a polling place? Does anyone know the answer? From our staff for this election,
That was,
my
that
bigger
was-
question
that
is,
was not
when you went to
available.
the
They did-
council meetings, did you specifically indicate the request for each of the closings so that you don't have to work on, was it Jersey Avenue that you said was so difficult? Did that come up directly with the council and mayor?
I spoke.
we're not speaking, we're not Charlie.
She asked the
Charlie,
question.
Charlie,
I
excuse me.
spoke to the housing authority. They said
Excuse
their
me,
building is
Charlie,
open.
Charlie, you're out of line.
They said their building is
Charlie,
available.
you're out of line.
They said they're available if they want.
No, I.
She did not ask a question to Charlie Cradaville. She
No,
was
I was
asking a question.
asking this lady who had mentioned it to us, that's, I
Oh,
apologize. I
I
apologize.
was not at that city council meeting. But
Oh,
I do
okay.
want to say that the Labor Ed Center is huge. That's all I want to
All
say.
right, thank you, I'm
As
sorry, I
in,
should have directed my
huge.
question to the chair anyway, I apologize.
Has anyone from our staff spoke to anyone in reference to the Providence Square as far as it being available? From our staff?
from our staff, to Providence?
Is it called Providence Square, am I correct?
Providence Square.
Yes.
We were told that that location is not available.
And you were told that by
The city clerk.
city
Are you
clerk?
talking about Unity Square in New Brunswick?
Excuse me,
No
I'm
problem.
gonna ask, everything's gotta go through the chair.
Correct.
And I'm saying this is the discussion, I'm not trying to limit your conversation.
Yeah.
We're trying to get some understandings. If you want to talk to the chair, I'm more than happy to talk to the chair.
If anybody in the audience knows the answer to this, let's ask them.
You can, Shirley, you're running the meeting, Sylvia, okay? I just don't want anybody out of, it's gotta be,
Yes.
I was gonna ask, is there a problem with volunteers showing up? What is the reason?
No, that's not the answer.
No. I was asking a question. I was asking a question because you said that there's a lot of polling places are not open because they're unavailable. And I'm asking, do you need volunteers to come open and to stay there? Because if, there's older people that are susceptible for COVID and things like that, and for safety, they don't want to come there, that may be understandable, but there's probably a lot of other people that want to maintain the democratic process going on. So I'm asking if there's like a call for volunteers to help.
You're talking about co-workers?
Yes.
We don't have no trouble getting co-workers.
Okay.
Great.
So we don't know the answer to that.
To which one?
Province Square.
Province Square, we told the management was uncomfortable with being a polling location for people using it.
Uncomfortable or not available?
They didn't want us to go. And it's not a public building.
So that would have been excluded anyway, correct?
Correct.
Is there anyone besides not wanting to be in that location that asked to decline, that they didn't want us for this primary election? For this school board election?
I believe the Senior Resource Center is close to the public.
Okay.
And that was the other location. That was the other location that was closed.
So even if we had voted, which Mr. Katz says we can't vote, for 14, we can't do 14 because we have at least 2 locations that physically either do not want us or are close to the public or just will not open the door to these to the school board election. Would that be correct?
That's correct.
The Senior Resource Center, is that a senior center where seniors come and congregate? Does someone know the answer to that? Madam Chair?
Charlie, you can answer
Yeah,
that.
it's a city-owned building. It's currently not in use right now, but
Senior clubhouse?
yeah,
Okay, so
people go there during the day.
So at that point, it's closed to the public because the seniors are not there congregating. And so the building should be available
Should
for
be, it's not
a polling location.
Can't make that
And it's a
determination for a
And
town
it's
that
a
you do
public,
not
it's
live
a
in.
public building.
Tom, if the municipality closes the building and closes it, I don't know if we have the ability to force the building open. And I don't want to go to court to find that out, do you?
The public building, it's closed for purposes of seniors congregating.
It's closed to the public. In other words, people aren't allowed in that building because of COVID.
No,
Is that the reason, or that's not the reason?
It's not the case.
Edison Senior Center closed.
No, this building, this,
No, I'm
yeah.
just talking an example.
Right.
Edison Senior Center closed, but we were all able to go there for a suffragette event.
For what event?
Suffragette,
Oh,
the right to vote.
but are you saying that?
Why can't we let the clerk find out?
I have, listen, if we are at the point that we all agree on 8, and we're missing 6, why can't the administrator, the warehouse manager, and the clerk come to some resolution and get back to us?
Sure. Right, we say.
If you get back to us and we have specific explanations as to why it's closed and why it can't be open, okay, then we have to decide that. But it's got to be that fully.
Really?
Yes,
Really?
yes.
Really?
Otherwise, I'm not agreeing to it. You can vote
Didn't
any
agree
way
with
you
it to
want to.
begin with.
Well, I just put a motion on the table, again, a second motion.
Second.
Would you repeat the motion?
The motion is that as soon as possible, but I'm hoping April 5th, because Good Friday, people are off, is that our administrator, our warehouse manager will have a meeting with the city clerk of New Brunswick to discuss, we are in agreement on 8 to discuss the other 6, which we're thinking 2 are not possible and not available, and to come up with something that they can hopefully bring back to the commissioners.
I'm going to vote against that because it does not include any reference to us specifically contacting the locations to say, not through the municipal clerk, directly contacting the locations to confirm their availability.
Could you call on our...
We don't do that.
Pardon?
I've never done that before. I don't call individual places.
And we also
We
never
go
had a
through the clerk's
situation where
office.
arbitrarily
Because they're the
closed
ones
six
that
of
make
them
the
knows about
decisions.
third
Always
of
been
our
done that
polling
way.
based on their knowledge of what goes on in your town.
Exactly. I don't live in New Brunswick.
Thank you.
The clerk does it, Stephen?
Excuse me.
The clerk?
We always lean on the clerks for that information. They go through that, they set it up for us. We don't do that indirect stuff. I wouldn't even know where to begin with that. So if he's asking me to do something I've never done
No,
before,
I'm not asking.
I can ask.
No,
No,
Don.
Don,
Oh,
then I would need assistance.
And the reason I referenced the press reports is because the press reports say, and from the municipal clerk say that the Board of Elections were involved in doing this.
Who
And
wrote
obviously the Board of
that
Elections-
press report?
Where?
Who wrote it?
It's tap into, it's not Charlie's.
Who wrote it? Just
Chuck
ask him.
O'Donnell.
Who wrote it?
Chuck O'Donnell. It's tapinto.net.
Madam Chair, may I ask
Just
you,
mention
Mr. Cradwell, did you write any of that article?
I do not work for Tap into New
I didn't
Brunswick.
ask you that question. Did you write any of that article?
No, of course not.
Okay,
I
good.
run New Brunswick Today. I
Okay,
wrote
good.
that article.
Again, my bigger concern is that your signs believe that there's voter suppression as part of the reasoning for this. And that, of course, is something that is absolutely unacceptable. My understanding is different from my own experiences, as I said, in terms of elected office, not just this one, that there are many reasons that go into a town's decision. And the compromise that was just stated by the other commissioner makes sense, that at least every community knows that we have open polling places that will be available, and further discussion to listen to the kinds of things that have been said here. So I do hope that when we vote on that particular compromise that was introduced, there might be another vote for that coming from the other commissioner, that at least, as I said, we can move forward, as opposed to requiring, I don't know, information that cannot be given when you know that the creation of sites and execution of such happens in each community across this county. I don't know, the president has to address. There's a question from the audience.
Is that a motion?
My motion is to revisit, yes, well, did we take a full vote?
We have to.
We didn't vote yet because one of the members indicated that what his vote would be before we got there. So I would like to vote on the motion of compromise that was introduced.
What was the motion?
So the
That
mo-
we're accepting we are agreeing that the 6 that have been placed by the borough clerk
I think it's,
will be in,
I think it's,
however many there are.
no, we'll be specific.
And
We
then
have
on,
to be
okay,
specific.
then you repeat it, because Monday or as
So I
soon as
believe
possible,
it's- I
there
believe
will
it's
be a
8,
discussion
So
regarding
to
the
accept,
request.
since we're all in agreement on the 8, that doesn't seem to be an issue. And that on the other 6, that the administrator and the warehouse manager meet with the, and I'm saying it's hopefully as early as Monday, because I think everyone is off over the holidays,
Right.
is to meet and discuss what we can come up with for, we're hearing that there's 2 are shut down, or possibly shut down, not being able to be used, or whatever it is, and how we could do something to work on something to make a compromise with everybody. That's what it is. That's the motion so far.
And there must be other locations we could use. I would think.
I don't know that
No,
answer.
but
And
we
we
have
use
to
the
find
clerk
out.
for that too.
And we need the clerk for what?
We use the clerk for that.
They present.
They
Yes.
propose to us, and then we go ahead
And examine.
and we investigate or, inspect.
So there's a second, there's a motion. Does everybody understand it, or?
Okay, Maria.
Chairman Engel,
Yes.
Commissioner Frankel.
Yes.
Commissioner Katz.
No.
Commissioner Moskowitz.
Great, thank you. Yes.
back to us with a specific report of if polling places can't be open, why they can't be open. That was going to come back to us for our determination.
I don't know what's going to come back to us because the administrator and the warehouse manager understand from this meeting exactly what we're trying to do.
Exactly what has been
And they're going to
presented.
sit down. I don't know what is going to come back.
Thank you.
So if I can tell you that, you know,
No, but
I don't know that answer.
the concept is the information as to why a polling place can be open or can't be open.
I'm sure they'll talk about everything. I have faith in our administrator and our warehouse supervisor to sit down with the clerk, and we've always had faith in them to do it. Why wouldn't we have faith in them now?
Because it's now, and I'm not going to have to do it now. Okay.
Oh, I have faith in you, I have faith in you.
You might be the only one.
No, don't say that, that's wrong.
Doesn't matter to you.
No,
That's not right,
That's not-
that's not right. That's not fair.
That's how it is.
Sure.
Who can speak under public comment? We've got to continue. Administration reports. We'll be here all night. Chief Stark's report.
Hi, thank you. I just kind of say one thing to the polling locations. We're going to need to know as soon as possible because we need to generate poll books based on each location.
Your comments? None? Yeah.
No, good.
Okay, public comment. There was a few people in the audience that wanted to say something.
Well, so what I was trying to ask
Please,
if,
State your name again.
Miguel Romero, R-O-M-E-R-O. So my question was, did the city clerk provide a reason to why they were closing those polling stations?
No, I didn't see that in her letter.
I'm sorry?
The reasons.
The reasons why they were consolidating the polling places.
The reason why we're consolidating polling locations was either availability or the rooms in which the polling locations were assigned were too small for social distancing for poll workers and voters and challengers within that location.
So by availability, these are buildings that are not owned by the city or not owned by the county? These are like independent buildings that were not open?
That are either third-party buildings that are not available or were not available, or public buildings that at this point are closed.
Okay. Yeah, that was my question. I was wondering like what the stated reason was, because I thought that a lot of the members of the audience have made a really compelling argument about having more open places to have less people in the building. And also the whole, having people from poor communities walk far away. I think, it shouldn't be like a Republican or a Democrat issue. I think this should be something where everyone should be having more towards keeping things open. We want to maybe make a holiday for voting so people can take off from work and things like that, like other places do. Other states have drive-in voting where people drive in their car. I mean, I'm sure there's lots of money to be made somewhere from someone to facilitate that. So, like, I think that, just, trying to reiterate, not only is it like a safety point, but also, political stability and like, I don't even know how you say it, but, yeah. Thank you.
Yes, good evening again. So I would just like to make the point that it seems to me that it's being put back into the city's court, and that they're going to give the same reasons that they gave before, and that we're going to wind up with the same situation, or very close to it. And so I think that if you don't tell them that they have to open more places, I mean, they gave reasons for closing the ones that they closed, so they're going to give the same reasons and come back and say, yeah, can't do it. But, I mean, they could do it, but if they don't have to do it, they won't, for whatever reason. They're going to stick by what they originally had planned to do.
It appears that COVID is the reason for closing, according to the letter.
Yes,
Pandemic.
it appears, but that doesn't objectively make sense, since you would need to spread the voters out
Exactly.
more, and it also doesn't make sense, well, we're just doing what we did last year. Well, last year was a mail-in election. If you want to mail everybody a ballot, then fine. Then open half the.
I happen to like your suggestion, to be candid with you. I like your suggestion that there's no reason why everybody shouldn't be maybe sent a mail-in ballot, but that way, again, it's not our, we're gonna go over these. You gave us some work to do, okay? We're gonna do the work.
So since it can't be a mail-in, for example, I live right by the senior center. I see it multiple times every day. Yes, it's true, it's closed because seniors don't want to and should not be congregating from all over the city at that location every day. There's no reason it couldn't be used for an election. In fact, that's a safer reason, so there wouldn't be seniors and voters there. There would be just voters, perfectly ample space. It's actually a separate entrance where we vote, easily sanitized and prepared. And I mean, yeah, it might involve, sending a couple city workers over to open it up and clean it or whatever. But New Brunswick got a lot of COVID money, a lot of money under the CARES Act. They can open it and clean it and use it for an election. That's absolutely not true that the senior center is not available. But I would not be surprised if that's what they say at all, because they already said it, so why wouldn't they repeat it? That's all. I'm just making a point that I don't see that they're being made to change anything.
I was just going to make kind of a similar point, as I said, about the labor Youth Center. I've been in there, it's huge. There's absolutely no reason that can't be used safely.
Which location is that, please?
The Labor Ed Center on Riders Lane. The senior center is also very big. I know that place too. And I'm not sure, is the Hungarian Heritage Center one of the places that's supposed to be closed? That's also very big. It's a museum. It's huge. And they have some very large rooms inside. I assure you that the size of the space is not a constraint. It's not a legitimate constraint. You could easily keep that place open and accommodate voters safely. The only one that I can think of is the one on Van Dyke. I guess it's across from the Aldi. The one, yeah,
On Van Dyke?
yeah, the housing authority, right? That's small, but I mean, then you could, there are ways of accommodating people if you just, make them wait outside.
Is that the Wilson and Schwartz Community Center?
Sorry?
That you're talking about?
No, the housing authority.
It's not on the list of the 6 that are being closed.
Oh, no, thank you.
She said there's an address of Van Dyke.
New Brunswick Housing Authority on Van Dyke Ave.
Yeah, so 6 that are listed is Rutgers Labor Education Center, Roosevelt School, Wilson and Schwartz Community Center, Hungarian Heritage Center, Providence Square, and Senior Resource. Is it one of those?
Roosevelt and
Schwartz
Schwartz
Robeson.
Community Center. Roosevelt and Schwartz Community Center is.
So it is, that's the housing authority.
Yeah,
That's the housing
well,
authority.
Those are the names of the two housing.
I thought that the New Brunswick Housing Authority was being closed as well. That's what's forcing people to want
It's
to
called
do it.
Schwartz Robeson Community Room, but it's the housing authority headquarters.
Okay, well, that's small, but there's still ways of accommodating voters, and they should be accommodated.
Anybody else?
Good evening once again, Charles Cradaville. Thank you for hearing us out. I hope you all know that I respect the work you do, and I know that you all work really hard, and it got a lot harder last year. I do want to just suggest that the board hold a special meeting to ultimately resolve this issue sometime next week, as soon as possible, whether that meeting's in person or held through, computer technology. I think it would be wise to reconvene with new information and get the answers that we didn't have here today. For the record, of the 6 polling places, 4 of them are public buildings. One is Rutgers University building, the Labor Education Center. I reached out to Rutgers and asked if it was available, did not get a response. The other Roosevelt Schools, of course, a Board of Education building. I reached out to see if it was available, did not get a response, and then questioned them at their meeting, and they gave blatantly false information about this matter. The Housing Authority, previously mentioned, Schwartz-Robeson Community Center, I reached out. They told me it is available. If the city wants it, they will open it. And I don't think it's all that small. I mean, it's maybe a little bit smaller than the room we're in now, but it's been able to be used to hold Housing Authority meetings for many months during the pandemic. And it's sizable enough that it could accommodate the deluge of voters that the New Brunswick school elections generate. The other aforementioned city building is the senior center, and I agree 100% with Linda that you just need somebody to open it up, clean it up, and you could run an election there. And in fact, it would actually be more ideal than pre-pandemic when you've got other uses taking place in the same building on the same day. The two privately owned polling centers that are proposed for closing are the Hungarian Heritage Center, which is owned by the American Hungarian Foundation. I do not know the status of that, but as mentioned, it's certainly big enough to accommodate the election if the owners would allow. And then the final one is a bit of an issue, the Providence Square senior housing. So it's understandable that the landlords, the owners of the building, might not want to be hosting other events like this. And it's unfortunate because there is another building in the district that would have been a fine replacement, and it's the school that's currently being demolished. So perhaps it's a fantasy or a dream, but the best solution would be for DevCo to give that school back to the Board of Ed, for them to put it back together, and that could be the polling place. But I don't know that that's going to happen, but we deserve better and need better. What's that?
Not by the 20th.
Probably not by the 20th, but I do think it was a travesty what happened to that school, and I think that the people of New Brunswick are beginning to wake up, and they deserve a voice in their school board. As you remember, we had a whole referendum about it in 2012, and the voters decided we want to elect our school board. We want to have a say in that, and I know some of the commissioners have experience serving on school boards and how important it is and how those elections foster dialogue, democracy, and ultimately make the lives better of the children and the families that depend on the school system. So I really sincerely hope that this board can work with the city and with the public to ensure as many polling places as possible are open. I'm glad that there was a bit of a compromise today, and I hope that you'll be able to review the letter from the Institute for Social Justice and listen and take to heart what all of us have had to say. And so, thank you for hearing us out, and hope that we can get together again next week and have a better outcome.
Motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second?